Hi everybody, my name is Amy and I'm one of the librarians who works in the Pennsylvania department at Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. Today I wanted to circle back and talk about another type of vital record that all genealogists are looking for as we're doing our research, and that vital record is the death certificate. For a longer explanation of what records are available here in Pennsylvania and Allegheny County specifically, please go back and watch our April 14th video that has a lot more information about what records exist and where you can find them. The most important thing to think about as you start searching for your ancestor's death certificate is where that person died, because that is where the record will have been issued from. You don't need to know where they were buried right off, you don't need to know where they lived, you need to know where they died, because that is where you will find that record. What you will learn from that record depends a little bit on the time frame in which you're doing your research and where your ancestor was living. These records are valuable because they are the most recent record that exists for your ancestor, and they are much more likely to be available, especially the later in time you go. They're much more likely to be available even for folks who don't have an official birth record, because records weren't being kept at the time of their birth. They will have a death record usually. So if you are looking for ancestors here in Pittsburgh and you go to the death registers that predate the modern death certificates, so those are pre-1906 records, what you will find depends on the entity that kept the records. For Pittsburgh and Allegheny City, those registers were extremely detailed, very similar to a modern death certificate. You will find the person's name and date of death, the cause of death, their parents' names if the person in the register was a child, where they lived, where they were born, and where they're buried. One small note on using those death registers: make sure when you are writing down dates that you write down the date of death and not the date that the registration was taken care of. Those dates could be off several days to several months, depending how diligent your ancestor's doctor was in completing all of his paperwork and registering the deaths. So just make sure you're writing down the correct date as the death date for your ancestor. After 1906, when the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania started issuing death certificates, the information became much more standardized. So when you are looking at a post-1906 death certificate, you will find the date of death, where the person lived, where they were born, and this can be very handy if they were born outside of the United States, but you're not sure where. This will at least give you a hint as to the country where your ancestor was born. No cities or counties, but the country will be there. The record will list their occupation, and it will tell you their parents' names and where they were born, the cause of death, where they were buried, and one detail that I think a lot of people tend to overlook because it doesn't seem that important, and that is the name of the informant, the name of the person who provided the information for the death certificate. And you want to look at that because the relationship between the person listed on the death certificate and the informant will greatly determine how good the information on the death certificate is. If you're looking at a death certificate with a lot of blank spots on it, chances are the informant did not know your ancestor all that well. And a good example of that might be the death happened in an accident in one of the mills, and your ancestor's coworker had to provide information for the death certificate. Your ancestor had moved here, but your great-grandmother and the kids had not come over yet and emigrated, so one of the fellow boarders in his rooming house may have had to give the information. And depending how much people talked about themselves, coworkers and roommates are not going to have great information about your ancestor. So you want to look at the informant to see whether that was a family member who is providing what should be fairly reliable information, or someone that you can't identify, and just take that information as something that you want to keep researching and being able to confirm. So if you're looking at a death certificate with one of these cases where there are a lot of blanks, or you're not entirely sure how the informant is connected to your family, How do you know if this is the record for the person you're looking for? Well, you can start to take the information on the death certificate and cross-reference it with other information that you do have for your ancestors. If you don't have anything yet, copy the record, put this one in your maybe file, and then keep going. So as you start to collect a range of vital records that mention this person, you'll want to look at the details and make sure that they all still make sense. Did the John Smith on this fairly sparse death certificate die 2 years before your John Smith supposedly married your grandmother? Probably not the right person. Does the death date for this John Smith make the person a lot older or younger than you were expecting to find for your John Smith? Keep researching. You either have some bad information somewhere along the way, or this is not the right person. There is nothing more frustrating than spending several hours, days, weeks doing research into a certain person only to find out that you have now amassed a ton of information about somebody else's ancestors. So that is really what I wanted to cover in talking about death certificates today. If you have any questions about where to find records that you're looking for, or what might be available, or questions about how to make sense of some of the information that you're finding, please put your questions in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.